Welcome. Can you hear Bobby?
Yeah, sure can.
All right. So
It looks
I'd
like
like to welcome everybody to this webinar on how to use business legal management. We really want people to be able to get the most out of their relationship with business legal management. And so this is our initial inaugural webinar. And so we'll be working out the kinks as we go through it. So Jessica, welcome. And we should have people as presenters. And so I need to figure out how we get the presenters audio on.
I think, George, can you hear me?
So I'm just going to test it right now at the start. Bobby, we can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now, George? George, can you hear me? Let's see.
So I've got to figure out how we...
Can you hear me now, George, or not?
I can hear you, Bobby.
Okay.
And we can't hear you, Jessica.
Huh, and I can hear Jessica. So let me tell that to George.
Can you hear me, George?
Can you talk?
Yeah.
We can talk to each other.
Bobby and I can hear each other fine.
It's actually great. We can talk about George and he doesn't know what we're saying.
Well, it's being recorded till he watches the playback.
On as an attendee. Can you hear each other?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now I've got you. Okay, now I've got you. My volume was down.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to go through a little bit how to get the most out of BLM, and I've put some slides together that I can share to do that. And so let's just talk about each of these different areas. I'm going to put the slides up. Can you see those okay now?
Yeah, they're up.
Okay. So we're going to talk about how to get the most out of the relationship with BLM. I'd like to welcome those people participating. I see that we do have some participants. So first of all, we're going to talk about what is BLM. BLM is not a law firm, and so we don't practice law. And I think that's one of the typical things, Bobby, that people have questions about is they think of us as a law firm, and we're kind of a hybrid of that situation. The way I would describe it is when I was working with Michael Dell, he was the CEO, but his CFO managed all the legal affairs. But the CFO wasn't uniquely trained to manage legal affairs. And so that's something that the CFO would manage lawyers, and the lawyers would provide the legal services. And that's much what BLM does. You have any insights on that?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really great point, George. And our, so I guess one, you're right, we're a consulting firm. We're not a law firm. And really we're comprised of either former presidents and CEOs of companies or general counsels and attorneys that have also run businesses. And so we try to bring a blend of those because we think that's the best way to look at legal is from a business perspective. And then it's also about having the right group for the job.
So I've got a slide up now talking about that, which is a good segue into it. So a principal consultant, it's always someone who has a lot of business experience. It's always someone who has run a business, founded a business, or run a fairly large, successful company. For instance, your background has been as a CEO, but you've also taken your companies through a lot of legal conflicts and legal strategies.
Right. So yeah, George, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not an attorney, and if I continue doing things right, I'll never be an attorney. But I've always had a really good appreciation for how important the legal environment is to business, because I learned a long time ago that really the whole business world is conducted in a legal environment. And I also found over time that, there's really talented attorneys and law firms out there that if you partner with the right people and you're able to get really good insight and you involve them early on, it creates an advantage, and it helps you run a better business, and it helps to protect your brand, and it's a better way to implement your business strategies as well. So I guess I'd say that's kind of my point of view on that piece.
So with a principal consultant, we're always looking for someone who sees the perspective both ways, who has a lot of business experience, understands the business objectives and strategies. So often lawyers just say, no, you can't do that. They don't come up with a strategy on how you can do it. They just say, no, you can't do it. And so we want someone who understands business, but then most of our principal consultants have also served as general counsels, reporting to a CEO with overall responsibility for legal, for looking after all the matters that could affect the company. But that is not that unguided with a strategy is not the best end game, because lawyers haven't been trained in business. So we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. Why do you think it's valuable to have a legal background for our consultants?
Oh, was that a question for me, George?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm doing this a lot as an interview.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's important that our consultants have a legal background or have been close to it. Just, in large part, part of the service that we provide is helping to spot issues for CEOs of companies, and then to help them manage through that. And in many cases, it's I guess it's really helpful that our group can help to to see that from that perspective. But I think having both the business and legal backgrounds is really important, because I always found that one of the biggest gaps a lot of times came in the communication. And so I've worked with a ton of different attorney firms, from securities work and bond work through corporate bankruptcy, litigation, all different kinds, and contract. But the individual people that I found that were the most helpful was kind of the rarer breed that was really well trained and understood how the law fit into the particular business that I was managing at the time. But they also were really good at communication and did a great job understanding the business objectives, right? And I found a lot of times when a lot of people get in the case where you have an issue that pops up, you have a problem, and you call an attorney. And if you're lucky enough that you're networked and you know an attorney firm that's really specialized in that particular area, they do a great job in the fire that they're called to put out or deal with. But a lot of times that might be come from a different perspective than the business objective that you're trying to achieve, or it's easy to get caught up and get caught up into the particular issue that you're dealing with, and not be able to take a step back and talk about how it fits into the bigger picture. And yeah, you know what? We're winning this litigation that we've been in for 3 years, but should we still be in the litigation, or should we be finding a different alternative? So I guess that's one of the reasons I think that piece is important.
Right. Is there a bigger strategy? I like to analogize to a game of football. If you were playing in a game of football and you had your team in the game, but you didn't understand all the rules. You knew what the objective was. You wanted to score. You wanted to get down to the goal line and cross the goal line. But if you didn't know all of the rules, for instance, if you didn't know the offsides rules, and you just kept getting penalized, and you couldn't figure out, why are they penalizing me? I'm playing by all the rules that I know. Well, if you don't know one set of rules, you can get set back. I've seen Tim's get set back with 10, 12 penalties for offsides, and lose a lot of ground, lose a lot of yardage. And that's kind of the same thing with business. The whole business environment is regulated by a set of rules of what you can and can't do. And if you don't understand even one of them, you can suffer a lot of setbacks, even catastrophic setbacks. There's a lot of people who are out there raising money, for instance, raising capital, and they're not doing it correctly. They're not doing it with the disclosures and the uh, offering prospectuses that they need to be using to protect themselves and to protect those who invest in their company. And in the end, some of them are going to prison. I mean, it becomes a very large setback in that business. And the rules are complex. You have to know the rules, and they're complex. They're not simple. There's just the IRS code is thousands of pages. And that's true with almost everything. Legal decisions. I read a legal decision about a water rights case for one of our clients, and it was 90 pages long. And in those 90 pages, there's many, many different rulings and calls on the law, and you have to understand those things. Some of our clients are in the MLM business, and there's some large cases that have come down on that, Herbalife, FEMA, and some other cases that are they're not setting precedent, but they're telling us how the government is thinking about these things. So, and the other thing is, CEOs aren't trained on those rules. There's no comprehensive part of an MBA education, except for a couple of schools. Wharton is one of them. But for the most part, CEOs don't understand anything about the complex set of rules that they're off trying to achieve their objectives. So that's one of the real reasons. It's one of the parts of the market that is lacking. And it's why we designed business legal management, because it fills a very important niche. I look at it as a gap. The other side of that is lawyers are not trained in business. I went through law school and graduated at the top of it, but I never really got any training in business in law school. Luckily, my dad was a businessman, an entrepreneur, and I'd worked with him a lot, and I really understood a lot, and it was the business side of law that interested me. But no training, nothing about business objectives and strategies in law school. It was all about recognizing facts, recognizing the issues, understanding the rules that pertain to those factual situations, and coming to some kind of a conclusion. And so that's the necessity for a firm like Business Legal Management. As businessmen, we're businessmen with a legal background, and we're lawyers with a business background. And that's a niche that you don't find out there. Like you were talking about, Bobby, if you just call your lawyer. If you're lucky enough to know a lawyer who specializes in the area, most people call their brother-in-law and get a referral or use him. And so that's a niche, it's a gap that we're trying to fill with business legal management. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add there, George, is you're right. I think that the key question that I always find that business owners or CEOs should be asking when there is a legal issue and then they're getting the analysis, they should be asking themselves, but so what, right? So you might know where the particular fact pattern lines up. The question is, does it really matter to the business? Is it a big deal or is it a little deal? And is it something, in other words, are we applying the right amount of time, effort, and energy to this? Obviously, businesses always are wanting to and need to be following rules and regulations, but I just always find a lot of times you got to keep it in perspective of where does it fit for the business? And you could be right on an issue or some sort of, it could be a litigation, but it could be wrong to continue to pursue it just because it may not make sense in the bigger picture of what you're accomplishing. I think it's that balance that's really important to make sure people keep in mind.
I completely agree. So a lot of our clients look at us and say, can we serve as general counsel of the company? And I think that's true. We only work for companies. We don't do work for individuals. And we can help the CEO develop workable business strategies. That's kind of the role of a general counsel. And we actually, if the company needs it, we can place a full-time attorney who works for us into the company as a general counsel. But for the most part, our clients don't need that. They're not large enough for it, or they feel comfortable with the services that we provide and the access that they have to high-level people. So, but we can manage the implementation of the strategies. We can also manage all the legal matters for the company. And we can do it by either putting a person in-house or not. But BLM does not actually do the legal work. So again, we play the role of that CFO or that COO or that CEO that wants to manage legal affairs in his company, but the actual work is done by lawyers outside of the company. So that brings us to the next question, is who does do the work? And there's two options there. The first option is a business law group. That's a law firm that's formed by some of the principals in BLM, and it's a sister law firm, and BLM has contracted with Business Law Group to provide legal services for our clients. And so Jessica is on the line, and Jessica manages that pretty much. Jessica, do you want to explain a little bit about what BLG does and how it works with BLM?
Sure. So we are a multi-state law firm that has attorneys that are licensed in a variety of jurisdictions. And basically what will happen is either a client from BLM or just from our own network, we do work for people who are not BLM clients as well, will call us and say, I have this particular need. Now, if they are part of the BLM network paying them some form of a retainer, we usually work out some form of a discount that they receive on those legal services. It just depends on what their particular contract is with BLM. And then if it's something that we can handle inside our firm, then we go ahead and assist the client in doing that. So we do a lot of transactional work. We do some basic regulatory research work, things kind of like that nature. We try and avoid litigation just because we are a small boutique law firm. But then if a client has something that needs to be done by a bigger firm or a specialized firm, we look at our network of other law firms that can assist with that and try and help set them up with someone who we feel is a good fit. It's always the client's choice whether to retain that other law firm, and then we help assist them in managing that relationship with that law firm. And we do assist with some of the legal work as well. So that way the CEO doesn't have to wonder what's happening in the next step of litigation, that we take that on for them.
So the BLM company can take advantage of that business law and at a discount, so they can actually save a lot of money and get a lot of services done there. The other option is we have a network of independent professional advisors. Some of those are legal advisors and some of those are non-legal advisors. Bobby, do you want to give us an example of a non-legal advisor?
Yeah, I mean, a non-legal advisor, and this really is something that came up over time, where what we found in a lot of cases, one of the most important roles that our BLM principal consultants fill for our clients, which again are primarily the CEOs of companies, they end up kind of falling into a role of trusted advisor just because of their experience and the things they're being asked to do. And while we always were set up well to execute and help them execute on legal strategy and had business law group and other law firms to assist with that part, there's other pieces that naturally clients began to ask, and we've had resources to be able to do. One could be expense reduction, right? So some people, so we have groups we work with that can help come in and analyze a company, and they'll look at 40 or 50 different points in the P&L expense lines and do comparisons and find solutions to help them be able to reduce costs for a growing company. So that would be just one example there. Sometimes it could be looking for assistance, whether it's bookkeeping or accounting. So lots of things as companies are growing. There's a lot of great third-party solutions today to help companies be able to grow and still stay nimble, and that's what we continue to add to. One thing that I would just use just to explain a little bit more what Jessica said about Business Law Group, the way that I think of, she mentioned that primarily it's transactional and contract work. I think that's really important. That's where we set up that firm to be able to focus on the most. One of the big reasons is we wanted to have what ends up being, we hope, a really economical and efficient solution for a lot of what I would consider day-to-day blocking and tackling issues that need timely legal support. And when you kind of combine that, the role of the group BLM, they're going to help you be able to identify what makes sense to do, right? So non-disclosure agreements or vendor agreements or manufacturing contracts. Those are all things that they're much more the day-to-day things that come up very frequently. And that's something that I've found, I think Business Law Group is set up great to be able to do. And then as there's other things or bigger items, those are ones where we're going to help partner you up with the right kind of firm to do that work. And a lot of times that's a biggest part of the guesswork or anxiety for an executive is trying to figure out if they're at the right, are you at the right firm for what you're trying to do? And let's just say it's intellectual property that you're working on. Okay, well, do I need an intellectual property firm that's $300 an hour or $1,200 an hour for this particular issue? And if you don't already have connections in the industry or you're not sure where to go, that can take up as much of the time of the work for the executive as anything else.
Yeah, in the end, it really is saving the executive time to focus on his business, right? It's that's really where it is. And the Business Law Group, and one thing that our clients probably should understand about the law group is that it's a group of independent attorneys. They're licensed in various jurisdictions, and they provide services out of the Texas office, but in reality, they're virtually connected to each other and to our clients. For instance, Jessica is in Wyoming, and we have other members of the firm in Utah, Chicago, Texas, and all around, right? So even though we have offices that we can access in those jurisdictions, it's not a law firm that you walk into the office. It's a law firm that gets on a video conference like this or on a telephone call and provides the services that you need. So that's one of the reasons that they can provide services to our clients at such a reduced cost with a discount, because there's not a lot of mahogany in their offices. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the BLG attorneys. One is Jessica, and this is Jessica, who's also on the line. And she has a lot of experience, probably, how many years of experience do you have, Jessica? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Let's see, I graduated from Gonzaga Law School in 2006 and went to work right out of law school, and I've been practicing pretty much since then. I've served on various boards of directors for nonprofit organizations, things like that. And then I started working with Business Law Group and Business Legal Management 2.5 years ago. And I've been doing that since. So.
And then we've got Paul in Texas. He's a licensed practice in Texas and Missouri with over 35 years of experience, been in private practice, worked as in-house counsel for a number of large companies, and has worked as outside counsel to a number of companies and clients of ours. So we're very excited to have Paul on board. Then Lindsay. Lindsay graduated from BYU. She's licensed in Utah and various federal courts, and she has a lot of experience in working with judges and with large law firms in Salt Lake City. So she brings a wealth of experience to us, and she's another one of the attorneys that you might work with. And then Stephanie, she's an Idaho attorney. She has a lot of experience representing clients in criminal and family law matters. She works with us and represents corporate clients in a variety of different matters. She's working right now on putting together a funding white paper that will help CEOs have a go-to document where they could really figure out how to stay out of trouble and how to best raise capital. So she's the newest member of our team, and we definitely enjoy and look forward to working with her. And then me, and there's a few other attorneys, Chris Cole, Joseph Wadsworth, and that's always growing. We're always adding attorneys to the team.
Yeah, I think you forgot, George. I think you forgot Todd Pingle, and he went to Washburn University, and he works in a lot of government regulated fields of practice and is in front of a lot of administrative law judges quite a bit.
Right. So he's also a very valuable asset to our team. And I didn't cover everybody. There's more attorneys involved. Anyway, wanted to get you familiar with them a little bit. Well, what's the value proposition for using BLM and BLG? The average general counsel gets a salary of $225,000 a year. When you mark that up for benefits and expenses, that becomes some real money. BLM clients are at a level usually where they need a general counsel. They might be approaching $50, $100 million in revenue, but they haven't really gotten into that until something comes up. And something comes up and they think, oh, I need legal help. What do I need to do? And one of the advantages of using BLM from the beginning is a lot of those legal issues don't come up because you're following the rules from the very beginning. BLM clients get access to an upper echelon general counsel level person, not an average general counsel. They get access to general counsels who in their career made $600, $700, $800, $1 million a year. They get the management of all their legal matters like they would if they hired a general counsel, but they get also specialists in a network of professional advisors that Bobby and our team have put together over a period of a lifetime of experience. If you add up just even the principal consultants' years of experience, it gets up into the 200 years or so. There's a lot of experience on the BLM team, and they'll build over the years a network of people that they have confidence in. And so you really save a lot of ground when you use the network of professional advisors. And those are guys too, like we talked about earlier, they're manufacturing process experts. They're accounting experts. They're experts in different fields other than law, but they're also specialists in intellectual property or in cross-border transactions. And so we have specialists that can address almost any issue that comes up. And then the other thing that they get that you don't get if you just hire a general counsel is you get access to BLG attorneys for general matters. So think of it as BLM clients get more for less. And any other comments on the value proposition, Bobby or Jessica?
I mean, one thing that for me, George, is I think it's really important is we've set up the model to allow companies to be more proactive and to start much sooner in the process. So I've been with companies that have grown from small up to big, and we've had a lot of internal, I've had legal departments that were in the hundreds before. But if you're smaller and you're not there, it's almost cost prohibitive to be able to hire in the type of talent that you need on a full-time basis, or you have to wait till you get to a certain size to be able to do it, or you have to do it in a stair step where you bring somebody in at a staff level and then kind of a junior management level, and you have to keep kind of adding people over top of people. And that's fine. Certainly that's one way of doing it. But I think what we've tried to provide is a way that you can get, like you said, top level talent on, and the great part is they're not in your office all the time, but they're there whenever the CEO needs them. And that ability to connect right away is really important. It's probably the most valuable piece. So that's what I think I like the most about the model, is being able to start earlier, be more proactive, because I think it puts you in a better place as you grow.
All right, great. I really appreciate that. It's a good value, and it's a value that they can get earlier. In fact, our less expensive program is an email program where you can email consultants, and it starts at $149 a month. There's no company that can't and shouldn't take advantage of that offer. So then we get to the question of how do you use BLM? So, and we've got several different clients that use this in different ways. And so I want to talk about some of the ways to do that. I mean, probably the standard that we've designed is that every month you would have a video consultation with your principal consultant, where you would do three things. You would review the strategies and objectives that the CEO has for his company, particularly the strategies and objectives he has to accomplish during the coming month. You'd look at the legal trends and try and give the CEO some advice on where the industry seems to be moving, where the regulation seems to be moving. And then you'd want to review the matters that are being managed by you for the CEO. And the upshot of it is what Bobby said earlier. You want to become a trusted advisor and someone that can take the burden off the CEO's shoulders, so the CEO can concentrate on leadership, on vision, on communication, and on managing his business. So that's one of the big advantages to a monthly video consultation. And so we'll advise any of our clients to take advantage of that. Now, that's not available in the lower email program, but even in the lower email program, I would use it. I would send emails often asking for these type of strategy, where the trend's going, I'd be asking a lot of questions via email. And then, of course, you've got regular access to BLG and the BLG attorneys, and you should use those. You should have them review non-disclosures. You should have them review your policy handbooks. You should have them review things and make sure that you're on the right track. So you get those advantages, and that's how a client would typically use BLM. Now, we have a couple of sample clients that we could talk about. The Pure Gen Holdings, the way they do it is we do have probably more than one video conference each month. There's several telephone calls. We probably talk to the CEO. Jessica, would you say that between BLG and BLM, we talk to the CEO once a day?
Probably. If not on the phone, certainly via email.
Right. And so they really make good use of us. And then Dome Tech is a company that uses us, and they use us mainly to manage outside matters. We also review their contracts. If a dispute comes up, we get involved in the dispute resolution. But if they have, for instance, they have an international arbitration going on in the British Virgin Islands, and we're managing that arbitration for them. Dunn's River, Bobby, you want to talk about how they use this?
Yeah, so they're a fast-growing beverage company. They've got they've got offices now all around the country. So we interface with the CEO and a lot of their executive team on whether it be day-to-day issues. We have a monthly strategy call that we go through, and then we also help them manage outside counsel on matters. So BLG does a lot of their contract work, gets into, employee items that you always have in a growing company, and we'll either help them with some of those if it's a basic thing, interface with their PEO provider, and also work with, outside employment firms. So we have a great relationship with them, and they're really fun to work with. They're growing, growing fast and doing a lot of exciting things, mergers and acquisitions, and so we're able to really serve as a one-stop shop for them and provide that flexibility they need for growth.
Banner Season is an online printing company, and they probably use this. They probably use BLM just mainly for access to BLG and the discounted BLG, where BLG has been able to put together a lot of innovative programs for them. They did a founders program for them, where founders could make investments and receive dividends. So, I mean, and generally they will use BLG. Paul Mitchell, they use us, they're subscribed to the email program for various of their schools. And so they send us a lot of emails. And if a dispute comes up, or if a contract comes up, or if something comes up, then they use the BLG attorneys. And Beacon Learning is another company that uses the BLG attorneys on a regular basis, and they're not a client of BLM at this time. They just use BLG. So there's various different ways that our clients use us. Any other insights into that?
No, I think I think the great part is we're able, those companies just on that list, just that small selection, they probably range in size from 1 million to probably a little bit over $100 million in annual sales. And we're able to help all of them just based on the flexibility of the way we set things up. And they're all different price ranges too.
Yeah. So what considerations do people need to think about? Well, I think you need to think about your contract strategy, how your contracts can tie in your customers, can create loyalty, can create big benefits for your customers and for you. You need to think about litigation from both sides, how it can affect you and how you might need to use it. Government regulation is another thing. We have a sister company, Policy Impact, that provides top level assistance to our clients in governmental affairs. There's many different industries that are heavily regulated, and it's very important to be at the table. If you're not at the table, your competitors will make the rules that you have to play by. And so we offer those services to all of our clients, and many of our clients take advantage of it. Paul Mitchell is one who's taken huge advantage of that relationship and have maintained their ability to do business where they wouldn't have maintained their ability to do business had they not been at the table for those talks with the government. Now, compliance is another area that BLG and BLM can provide. And Jessica, could you tell us a little bit about the compliance program and how we can actually put a compliance officer in and do third-party compliance for companies?
Yeah, so basically, we can assign someone who has compliance experience to come in and be an outside third-party compliance officer. They work really heavily with employees of the company to kind of have a person that's actually on the ground at the company, and then they tell the community to take over those higher compliance needs. And I know some CEOs really like that, because then it's not an employee or someone like that is saying we have to do these particular things, but it's an outside person that is adding validity to the CEO's vision of what it is that they're trying to accomplish in the company, that says this is what we have to do and this is why we should do this. I think it also allows for some creativity and looking at how can we be compliant but still meet our business objectives. Things like that are some values that can be added with that.
Great. Bobby, why a third-party compliance?
I think in many cases, it makes a lot of sense. And the reason is, industries or businesses that need to have, or in highly regulated industries, they need to have a ongoing and continual compliance program. It's another one of these where when you're growing, I think it's actually easier, and you get more for your money, in my opinion, by being able to outsource it because of the flexibility that we can that we could provide. So in one case, take the instance where you're at a point where you're ready to hire a compliance manager, or you're backfilling a compliance manager that may have left. In many cases, it depends on how it works, but it may not always be a full-time job at a compliance manager level, and those are expensive resources. A lot of times you're going to be, spending, depending on the industry, but easily $150,000 to $200,000 a year all in for a compliance manager. And really, you may not need them all day, every day, but at some point you have to commit and make that hire. Whereas I think we can have a more flexible model to where you can afford to have that caliber of a resource earlier on. And you as the CEO also have access to them whenever you need to, and they can be managing a program. So being able to leverage, fractional resources, or you end up finding you have your compliance manager is sitting there and doing a lot of the busy work that probably isn't as good a use of their skill set, but it's because you're trying to bridge that balance of when do I bring them in? I'd rather have better help or better knowledge on this area because it's important, but at some point you end up having to overpay. I think it's a better way to try to model it out.
Right. So again, the summary is with BLM, you get more for less. And
that's our goal.
That helps in compliance too. And when the hen is guarding the chicken coop, or the fox is guarding the chicken coop, I guess you got problems. And this way you look at it and you say, okay, we've got a third party doing this. It's not an employee, like Jessica said, it's a third party. So you can get more information on our websites, businesslegalmanagement.com, and for Business Law Group, blgtexas.com. It's been a pleasure to present and to talk about these items. We're planning to do regular webinars on the fourth Wednesday each month at the same time. The next one will be June 26th, and we'll be talking about 10 things CEOs must know. So any parting comments?
No. Look forward to seeing everybody next month.
Yeah, look forward to seeing everyone next month, and thank you for taking time to attend today.